Have you ever wondered about the cost of living in one of the world's most expensive cities? Today, I want to share with you the cost of living in Singapore. I've had the privilege of living in Singapore for more than 3 years, and I think I have a very good grasp of the cost of living for someone here, be it as a student, as a working professional, or even as a standard worker, if you will. So if you find this video interesting, please smash the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you for more videos. So let's talk about the cost of living in the Lion City, Singapore. Singapore has been deemed and classified as one of the most expensive cities in the world. Some publications even say that Singapore is the most expensive city there is on the planet. Now, is that true? I think there is not a yes or no answer to that. It truly depends. It depends on your individual situation, whether you're here with your family or not, whether you have kids or not, on your habits, your expectations, and your spending attitude as well. And lastly, it depends on your travels as well, right? Singapore and your benchmark. Singapore is can indeed be very expensive if you're used to a, let's say, village lifestyle in the outskirts of an average country, like it could be for me being Italian, or it could be comparable to other megalopolis in the world like New York or London. So what I'm going to do now is to share with you some of the main expense chapters you're going to face when living in Singapore. There is some buckets that are always relevant, no matter your background or your expectations about living in Singapore, and cover with you what are the average prices you're going to be looking at. So hopefully you get a very good idea of what the cost structure may look like for you. So let's get started with housing. So I have the privilege of knowing more than the average Joe about housing due to the job I do. I actually kind of do sell residential housing in Singapore. I'm one of the few AMOs or experts, if you will, that does so. So I can tell you about this very special market. Now, when it comes to private or to personal housing in Singapore, there is a few options. You have public housing, which is called HDB. You have private housing. Private housing comes in two forms. You have apartments slash condominiums, condos for short, or landed properties. Now, if you're looking at your average flat, I'm gonna take a two-bedder apartment, right? That's how people classify apartments in Singapore, based on the number of bedrooms. Say a two-bedroom apartment of, around maybe 700 square feet. Your average rent will be most likely above $4,000. 4,000 Singapore dollars, of course. All the figures will be in Singapore dollars. Now, today's exchange rate is roughly 0.7 to 1, meaning that one Singapore dollar is worth 0.7 US dollar, right? So I would say two-bedroom apartment, 700 square feet, which I'm not really sure in square meters. I guess it's about 55, yeah, almost 60. It comes down to about 2,800 US dollars a month. Now, it can be cheaper, it can get a lot more expensive than that. If you go for HDBs, so public housing, you, depending on the area you're in, you may pay significantly less than 4,000, probably around the 3,000 mark. But if you stay smack in the city center, it doesn't matter, public housing or not, you're gonna pay, I would say a comparable amount of money. Of course, the size of the apartment may change. When it comes to utilities, I can give you my current utilities expenditure. That for a two-bedroom apartment, it will probably come down to about 200 Sing dollars a month. Again, that depends on the amount of cooking you do, how much you use the aircon, which for many foreigners is a necessity. and your water usage, right? But all in all, you can estimate spending about 200 Singapore dollars a month on utilities. So, or what? How much is that? 140 US dollars a month. So that's housing. Housing, it's I would say a big pain point of living in Singapore. Here I'm gonna sidetrack a little bit, but when it comes to housing, something you have to keep in mind is the fact that as a foreigner, chances are that you will not be able to purchase a residential property in Singapore, except a lucky few, including U.S. citizens, Liechtenstein citizens, Swiss citizens, etc. 5 nationalities. Everyone else has to pay, as of today in 2025, 60% buyer's stamp duty on any property, any residential property, excuse me, in Singapore. Which means that if you were to buy a $1 million property, you will effectively pay $1.6 million plus lawyer fees, etc. Right? So not doable. Yeah, long story short, not doable. So what it means is that you have to pay rent no matter what, and you are also subject to spikes in demand. Just to share with you, when I came to Singapore 3 years back, I used to pay X amount of money for my lease. Then after a year, due to a spike in demand, the rental price went up by about 35%. What can you do about that? Absolutely nothing. That's the market. There's something amazing about Singapore is that it's a capitalistic country, a very well developed economy. Demand goes up, prices as well, right? If the supply remains limited. So housing is a pain point. At the same time, given the fact that currently you don't have that many expats slash foreigners flocking in the country, prices have stabilized, and actually you're seeing rental prices slowly but surely going down. Now let's cover another very interesting topic, which is that of food, eating out. So Singaporeans and people in Singapore love food. In Singapore, you have so many options when it comes to food. I'm not only talking about cuisine, but also about budget, right? So I would say, three different styles of food you can go for. So the first bucket would be hawker food. Yeah, you could call it street food. The second one would be I would say casual cafes, and the third one is restaurants. Now, hawker foods slash street food. The vast majority of Singaporeans locals eat, I would say, maybe not every day, right, but very very often hawker food. So you have specific areas, within the city, within every neighborhood, where you have a concentration of small food store owners that sell their products, right, or their food. So even though we have also seen, due to inflation, an increase in the cost of hawker food, you would typically spend between $5 and $8 Singapore dollars for a dish in a hawker center or at a kopitiam. That's a local cafe which does not have aircon, by the way. Yeah, just fans, just fans. So that's very very affordable. That's the I would say the pillar of dining in Singapore. As you can tell, by any standard, this type of food is extremely affordable. The second bucket I was mentioning is cafes. So here we were talking about places which are air conditioned, most likely places that most likely come with a service slash GST, that is VAT percentage to pay on top of your bill. There is no real tipping in Singapore, by the way, right? But what at cafes, you're on average paying a little bit more for your food because of these service charges and the we said the VAT aka GST charge for food. Here, your average dish will probably cost between 15 and 25 Singapore dollars for a dish. Typically, the cuisine will be a bit westernized, not necessarily local food. But again, the type of environment you're eating it in is definitely more, I wouldn't say pleasant, but more comfortable, definitely, due to the aircon. The third bucket of food is restaurants. So here we're talking about proper restaurants. The waiters may even have a suit or some sort of uniform, and here the price I would say are $30 plus per dish. Again, of course, you have your service charge, your GST to pay on top, which by the way it's 19% total. So this is definitely not your everyday type of food, at least not for me and for 99% of people in Singapore. But again, I would say quite comparable. If you look just at the restaurants bucket, very comparable with very big cities in the world. Tokyo, London, you name it. Overall, right, if I were to summarize for the food category, here you're looking at I would say a plethora of options. You can eat very very cheap in Singapore. Actually, sometimes even cheaper than Malaysia, Indonesia, countries that you would not associate with expensive dining. Right, that's how cheap Singapore food can get. At the same time, it can get extremely pricey, right? So the choice is truly yours. Here you may be wondering why I didn't even mention home cooked food. You have lots of people who don't cook at all. You have a lot of people who cook very rarely, right? And actually, cooking at home is more expensive than hawker food, right? So it's not super common to cook in Singapore. A lot of foreigners do. I would say just for the dietary reasons, not really for the cost part of it. Actually, if you were just to eat at a hawker all the time, you probably save some money. By the way, another important expense category that I wanted to cover, because that's key, is that of just partying, right? Entertainment, because that's truly what keeps us going, doesn't it? So when it comes to lifestyle entertainment, again, Singapore offers a lot of things, and for any type of budget. Now, something that I would mention is that if you drink alcohol, alcohol in Singapore is very expensive. It is heavily taxed. So if you were to order a beer, at a bar, chances are that you're spending at a very minimum, I would say 14 Singapore dollar for not even a pint, by the way. Say half a pint, or your standard bottle beer, 330 ml. So alcohol is very very expensive. Yeah, and something that if you're coming from Europe, for example, from most European countries, you would not be used to. I don't smoke, but cigarettes are also very very expensive. You could say all vices are very expensive in Singapore. Now, when it comes to things to do, I would say that it's if you suffer the heat, which is very common in Singapore. A lot of indoor activities are paid. You have to pay for that. Why do I say that? You have malls everywhere in Singapore, which are air conditioned, very comfortable. But most malls don't have extensive seating areas, right? Except restaurants, kopitiams, etc. And activities inside the mall you'll have to pay for, obviously, right? So most of the time, in your free time, if you want to do anything in Singapore, you will have to pay. Again, here very hard to put a specific figure on it. Here it truly depends on your budget, what you want to do. But yeah, keep that in mind. Of course, Singapore is a very green country, green city, and there is a lot of parks, outdoor activities you can do. After all, it is an island. But again, if you suffer the heat, if you don't want to sweat, that's probably not for you. A side note here, when it comes to entertainment, I would say Singapore does not compare very well to other major cities in the world in terms of arts and culture. While you have exhibitions going on, you have a lot of fantastic museums in the city. Um, the in terms of the just the sheer amount of activities and the quality of those, I would say Singapore still lags behind compared to, say, New York or London in the UK. A honorable mention in terms of spending money, which may be very interesting for you. It definitely was for me. Is taxation. Now, tax is something that you don't really feel unless you have experienced paying less or more taxes in different jurisdictions. Now, Singapore has a relatively, I would say, low personal income tax rate. If you're coming from the US, if you're coming from Europe, most likely you'll pay less taxes in Singapore. Forgetting the fact that in the US you have double taxation, right? But that's a different story. Now, in Singapore, you have different tax brackets. The tax rate goes up to 24%. That's the maximum rate as of 2025. Now, the vast majority of people will pay below 20% effective tax rate, right? Which is very reasonable, I would say, compared to most countries. Keep in mind that what you'll get back for those taxes? Absolutely nothing. No pension, no benefits, no, say, discounts when it comes to buying housing, because effectively you can't, right? So you're paying less taxes, but say compared to Europe, you're not getting as many benefits. Yeah, so these, I would say, are really the main categories that everyone has to take care of in Singapore. I did not mention anything about insurance because insurance is not mandatory in Singapore. Maybe I would make another video about it. But overall, to summarize, I would say that Singapore is truly a place where you can choose how much you spend when it comes to food, when it comes to entertainment, going out. At the same time, it's a place where you have very expensive rent, which is at the same time comparable to major cities across the world. Unfortunately, it's a place where you cannot really buy property, so you have to account for the fact that you will be renting, for all of your time here. And lastly, when it comes from a taxation perspective, you may be getting a 10-20% discount, which means additional 10-20% of your income in your pocket every single year, which, it's very, very substantial, right? So that's the cost structure for your typical person living in Singapore. I hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time.